Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, where the topic is Agile Product Delivery for DevOps for Total Business Agility. My name is Doug Wellsby, and I'm the Partner Channel Manager here at Wicrosoft. I'm also joined by my colleague, Jose Levy, our Practice Director of Azure Cloud Services and Agile PM, and our special guest today, Dr. Wiselin Mathurin, an Enterprise Agile Transformation Leader at the International Business Consultants. During today's webinar, attendees will be on mute and the line will not be open for questions. However, feel free to use the GoToWebinar question feature to submit questions. We'll address these questions during the webinar and we'll respond via email if we do not get to your specific question. If for some reason you get distracted or pulled away during the webinar, no need to worry, as I'll be emailing a link to the presentation once it has been posted to our YouTube channel. I'll now turn the presentation over to Jose.
Thank you, Doug, and thanks everyone for joining us. Today, we're very excited to be talking about Agile product delivery for total business agility. And we have our special guest, Dr. Wiselin Mathurin, as Doug introduced us. So what are we going to cover? Just a general overview of the key concepts for, say, DevOps. How do we actually move to transform to Safe DevOps? We actually are going to do a real live example of Safe DevOps, and then we'll deal in the topics of how we get started transforming, how you can get started transforming and improving your current practices. So we have a lot to cover today. I'll go ahead and quickly get started. As we introduced Wiselin, he's going to be actually giving us the live demonstration. We'll do our part in terms of OnePlan for lean portfolio management, where you actually do the planning. And then when we get to the actual DevOps component, we'll hand it out to Wiselin. He'll introduce how that actually takes place. He's a very experienced practitioner. And I think that's one of the takeaways when you actually are doing DevOps. You need to rely on experts that have actually done this before and have the proven case studies of being in large organizations like Wiselin has. So what is Agile Product Delivery? So Agile Product Delivery is the DevOps component within SAFe. And in fact, in the European SAFe Summit that just occurred, this is the DevOps component is actually evolving to DevSecOps as a critical component. So we'll talk about that also. But the takeaway here is if you are moving in the direction of becoming a lean enterprise and driving business agility, Agile product delivery is a core component. You have to address this. It's one of the 7 core competencies of a lean enterprise. And you can see the definition is very aligned to what DevOps actually is a customer-centric approach for releasing continuous flow products and services to customers. So we've done previous webinars. You can go to our webinar site and see whether we've addressed lean portfolio management, organizational agility. This one is, I would say, one of the 2 core ones within ScaleAgile, which is team and technical agility defines how teams are going to work and develop, and Agile product delivery brings it all together. So this is a core competency that you want to focus on. In terms of how it's reflected within SAFe 5.0, we just put in here the model, and this is the portfolio configuration of ScaleAgile. We've highlighted the levels within portfolio where it's addressed. So we have customer centricity, which has to do with understanding what the need of the customer is, defining customer journeys. There's a number of different tools and approaches for actually doing design thinking. The next is really core to DevOps or DevSecOps, which is continuous delivery pipeline. This is what we're trying to accomplish. And we do that by measuring through our Calmer approach, which I'll get to in a second. But this is really what we're driving towards within ScaleAgile Framework. So just for those that have need perspective on the DevOps timeline, this is not a new concept by any means. You can see here some critical dates of when DevOps actually got into mainstream. We started really in 2009, and by now, this is an adopted best practice in terms of creating value within development organizations. When you put it together with ScaleAgile, it's even more powerful because you're bringing greater alignment between development and operations, as DevOps says. So this is something that you have to, if you're not already doing it, you have to address, and you have to continue doing it in order to improve. The benefits are fairly dramatic for the top performers, and the variance between top performers and bottom performers is also pretty wide. So you can see here that deployment frequency, more frequent deployment, are increased exponentially, faster lead time, and faster time to restore. Basically, all the metrics that you would expect from DevOps will improve if you actually start addressing this practice. In addition, you can see here that lower change fail rate is also decreases, which is a huge improvement. So DevOps, in the end, is people, process, and tools, but it's also mindset, culture, and technical practices. On a very simplistic basis, we're putting together development and the operations side, infrastructure and operations. They have different goals, and here we're going to get everyone aligned to go in the same direction by having all the different participants working together for that speed and stability. So the big word here is alignment, changing the mindset, and then bringing all the participants together. One of the great takeaways is when you start a transformation, DevSecOps transformation journey, you start defining that your development value stream with all of the participants in the room, both development operations, and everyone gets to see exactly what goes on during the flow of value, the flow of a feature, and that is eye-opening for some folks because they actually have never seen something go from end to end. So you're trying to drive that alignment through your DevOps practice. And here we start looking at what the transformation to that continuous delivery pipeline. What we're going to focus on is, trying to get from the standard development perspective to one of a continuous delivery pipeline, and every one of these are areas that you're going to focus on in the building of your DevSecOps practice internally. The continuous exploration, and this is essentially where we define our features in a specific format and also our test in order to then allow for automation through continuous integration and continuous deployment, followed by release on demand. And the decoupling of release and production are really a key milestone that you want to achieve. So we're trying to drive towards, this is our to-be picture with our Agile release trains, which again are a critical part of ScaleAgile. So I mentioned earlier the move towards DevSecOps, and that's really of critical importance now. The practice has a number of different methods and automation that occur in every one of the aspects of our health radar that where you're going to be dealing more with security. So this is now forefront, forefront importance when you actually start developing your DevSecOps practice. You're going to integrate security into every part of the delivery cycle and make it a critical component of your transformation. We're going to use a calmer approach to evaluate where we are, and this has been in the market for some time. It's just that Safe named it calmer before it ended with an S, but essentially it's a cycle where we measure our competency based on these components of culture, automation, our lean flow, measurement, which is critical to DevSecOps, because it's metrics through the entire flow of value, and then recovery. So within ScaleAgile Framework, this is how we evaluate our maturity. So how do we get started? First, we're going to assess, and there is a self-assessment available for Agile product delivery. You can see that it's based on those 3 pillars in the beginning within the SAFe diagram: customer centricity and design thinking, developing continuous delivery, DevOps in the continuous delivery pipeline, and develop cadence and release on demand. And likewise, you saw this earlier. This is our health radar that allows us to see where we are along the 4 different aspects of exploration, integration, deployment, and demand. The concepts, we're gauging how we're making progress in every one of these activities, and these activities represent both skills and tooling within our organization. So it's people, process, and tooling in order to enable that automation of our integration, deployment, and release. So, all of these represent, again, skills that you might have to acquire or tools that we might do and we might need to get. And throughout the, your improvement cycle, you can measure yourself and see where you're at along the health radar. So another first step is to define your DevSecOps transformation roadmap, and that begins by defining the DevOps transformation canvas, as you see here, and it's based on a value stream, a development value stream, which are all the activities that we do comprise of the arts, and Weissman will get into that in a second, and how we actually define the development value stream. And then all of the different activities that go, you're going to start with your current state, where you're at, and you're going to be targeting that future state over your development value stream. Then you'll be updating this as you continue to make improvements through your journey. So now I will actually start a demonstration, and just to give you some context, we'll start with the planning of it in a top-down portfolio management, lean portfolio management approach. After that, we will get into the actual DevOps cycle. So 1 second here, and I will change my screen. We are going to start today within OnePlan. So OnePlan is a portfolio management solution that addresses a number of different scenarios. We enable bringing strategy to reality by allowing any type of top-down planning to be connected to the bottom-ups approach where work is actually being done. So this is actually modeled after ScaleAgile. So this is a safe configuration of OnePlan, and you can see here that we have all the different amounts. We've been pretty much by the book in terms of having a portfolio that's made up of value streams, that makes up of epics, and it has features within. We have some projects because there are some waterfall projects that we might be doing, and we do have strategic themes and key results here. So our plans all have details and canvases in order for us to see where we're at, and we are going to go through the journey here. The one thing I want to show is I will show some views here that actually represent what we are going to be doing, and we can see here that we have our PI planning list view that shows us the features that have been committed within a particular program increment. And you can see that we have some metrics that are coming across from our team planning tool in terms of what teams are doing it, the number of stories and remaining stories are within a particular feature. And we can move to our boards, and I just want to show a couple of things before I turn it over and we follow the journey of a feature going through. Within PI planning, you can see here that we have our increments, we have some WIP limits that we can define, and we can define constraints for. We have our backlog that is coming in from, again, our team planning tools. And the concept is to allow you to, move backlog items into a particular increment as you're doing your work. We have a number of controls here in terms of being able to change, the columns and the lanes. And you can see that we also have dependencies in terms of being able to show features that are dependent on others in the future. At any point, if I wanted to actually see the content of one, I can go to quick edit and then get to a particular feature. I could have stories in here listed in terms of composition of that feature if I wanted to also. But you can see that we have, all of the metadata that you might want to track for a particular feature as it's being defined within the team planning tool can be brought into OnePlan. So I want to, I'm going to now bring to attention this feature here, umbrella of the list supported. Umbrella has to actually be add umbrella to the list of supported products. So this is a feature that has to be completed. And I'm going to go back to the front because that's the one back to our portfolio list. So we can actually see where that belongs. And I will go down to my epics. So we have within our planning define an epic that is a terrific transport corporation. And we actually have to add an umbrella to the list of supported products for delivery. So this is actually a feature that's been added as part of this epic. And we have to actually pull this through. It's ready, it's been ready. So I actually want to see how this is going to go through the life cycle, and that's what we're going to focus on right now. So I will turn it over to Weisland, who's going to show us exactly how this feature is actually going to make it. We do have already some metrics here that have been defined, which are going to be critical as we move forward in taking this feature through our development pipeline. Weisland?
Thank you, Jose. Let me see if I can figure out how to share my screen. Okay, main screen. Okay. All right. Jose, can you help confirm if you can see my screen, the one with Azure DevOps?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. So I'll pick it up from where Jose left off. He did a great introduction about getting up to this particular use case of one particular story which we are going to take it, or a feature we're going to take it all the way through the pipeline. Now, and here is the OnePlan angle of the portfolio management, what he demonstrated, and which sits very well integrated with Azure DevOps. We're going to talk about that, but before I do that, I just want to make sure for the next 5 minutes I quickly give the picture and then walk you through the various pieces. Now, in many angles, we're talking specifically about DevOps. People think it's set of geeky guys sitting together and doing some tooling. That's not the case. It's very important to understand, the real reason I really love the SAFe framework. It marries DevOps and makes sure that it works hand in glove. DevOps and DevOps and SAFe, if they don't work hand in glove, you will not get agility out of the system. Now, to reiterate that angle, we need to make sure a people, process, and tools angle is always working together to drive this. Now, in this particular demonstration, I'm going to walk through these various tool stacks, but it's very important to understand that each and every tool here as a set of different stakeholders who have to work together from a people or a team angle. It has a set of processes to be followed for it to work efficiently. And of course, that is the tool itself. That's very important to understand. Okay, I'll come back to this picture and make sure that I walk you through this pipeline. But before going anywhere, okay, if we don't implement DevOps in a value stream, we will not get agility out of the system. I have a lot of companies where they, if I go to a company and say, hey, let's do Azure DevOps, or let's say, let's do Jenkins, for example, they're like, we're already having it. And why are you not getting maximum value out of the system? Or why doesn't value flow seamlessly to your pipeline? It's because they don't have things organized around value. Now here, we can double click in another webinar to go detailed into this piece called value stream mapping and value stream identification. Step one is value stream identification, where here the green process, the green things here indicated here in this flow is the business process, and it shows the various interactions with the customer and the business operation folks. Then the yellow ones here, the boxes, or the systems to support the business operation, and then the folks here or the development folks working to support and build these systems. And then we have to make sure that we form development value streams in a way that things are not siloed, and it makes sure that all the interdependencies are accounted for, and make sure that we don't have organizational silos, but rather people organized around value. Now, after you organize people into development value streams, in this case, there is one operational value stream and two development value streams, which are in the blue pictures. And then we split the development value streams into agile release trains or team of teams based upon multiple criteria. More importantly, making sure that there is seamless and smooth flow of value. If we don't do this particular step, if we skip this particular value stream identification and value stream mapping exercise, and then do DevOps transformation, most likely we'll end up with something what we call tool defragmentation or unsmooth flow of value. Okay, now that we have talked about it, let's go ahead and walk through our use case. All right, now let's show the picture. I'm going to go back here. Okay, now if you see here, looks like our business stakeholders have identified a feature and then they wanted to get it done. Now, what is this feature? Let me show you the application itself. So if you see this application, currently it's an autonomous delivery vehicle application. And if customers, it automatically knows where the customer is. And if a customer wants to buy something, he places an order, and then it sends that, routes that request to a store, and it also sends that information to an autonomous vehicle, which comes and picks up that information or the good from the store and then takes it to the customer. So this is the piece. Now our use case is that it's a rainy season and users want to get more products, and let's say they want to add an umbrella. So the current feature that we're going to work on is to add an umbrella into this option through a microservice. So how do we do that? And let me walk you through. Now, so in Azure DevOps currently, which is the tool, we already saw that the business owners have the LPM, the Lean Portfolio Management Office, has already prioritized this feature, and it has spin up a particular user story, which we are going to take it all the way through. And we have shown you the Azure DevOps tool where the story has been documented. But the first thing here is something called a gherkin syntax. Now, this is very important to note. So when the product owner is documenting this particular user story here, so it's very important to note that he is documenting it into a given, when, then format. This syntax is called the gherkin syntax and supports the behavior driven development, where we have a framework which supports the development of test cases up front. The testers will work proactively by ahead of the development and make sure that most of the use cases and are clearly articulated, thereby avoiding a lot of defects. Let me explain a little bit more on that. So if you look at this picture, traditionally we are aware of development happening first and then testing. But if you see here, because of BDD, we have left shifted and we have testing happening first and then development. So what will happen is this is a very big cultural and a mindset change where these testers would proactively work with the product owners and also the development team to take this acceptance criteria, which was written in Gherkin syntax, and automate test cases. Obviously, because none of the development is done, all these test cases are expected to fail. And then when the developers begin to start writing their test cases and start developing, slowly one by one things will begin to pass. And let me demonstrate that. Okay, so we go here and let's assume right now the product owner has finished writing the user story and the test case. As a tester, I would be copying this Gherkin syntax and then going into my IDE. So we are going to use Python programming, and we are going to use an IDE called PyCharm, to do this BDD or behavior-driven development. So if I am a tester, let me see here, I would literally, in a way, copy paste that acceptance criteria here. There is a very great synergy between various parties driving alignment right here. It makes sure that developers, testers, and product owners are on the same page. Now, because our development is not complete, we anticipate our test cases to fail. So let us see how it is run. We go to the terminal. I already have this ready. So you'll see here that we are now using a framework called Behave, which supports BDD in Python. So to visually see it, currently we are going to use Selenium. We are going to use Behave framework, which supports the BDD. And here is the IDE called PyCharm, where the BDD is going to be done. So currently we are at this bucket right now in this pipeline. So let's do it. I'm going to go and run that BDD. We would now anticipate the test. If you see, it should supposed to now launch a browser. It is now filling in. It should supposed to fill in the information. It's going to try to select the product called Umbrella and then submit. But Umbrella is not there because development is not complete. So that's why if you see at the results at the bottom here, only 2 steps have passed. One has failed, and all the remaining steps, which is the user selecting the umbrella, the payment, everything is now skipped because it failed right here because umbrella is not there in the pull down, right? So I'm just to for example, if you want to little bit double click and make sure, I want to make sure that I explain this functionality. Why don't I go here and let's assume that instead of checking for umbrella, let's assume that I'm going to check for the raincoat, which is already there. Now we assume that all the test cases should pass, right? Because the raincoat was already there. Let's see if that works. I'm going to save all, and I'm going to execute the same thing. Let's see. Now again, it is choosing the address, should select the product, raincoat. It's selecting the payment details and it's submitting the order. And now, because raincoat was already there, you see that all the test cases passed. This very clearly explains behavior-driven development. We are left shifting, and it's no longer catching the defects after the fact. It is like quality assurance. It's about quality engineering and finding defects even before it happens. Okay. Now that we have explained BDD right here, now let us go into the developers shoes. Now, traditionally, we are used to start developing right when the requirements are given. In this now, in the DevSecOps model we're teaching right now, we are going to do testing or unit testing first. The testers would be most likely doing some pair programming with maybe another developer, and maybe one developer would be writing the test cases, unit test cases first, and then the other developer will be parallelly developing. That way, again, we are left shifting the unit testing also, writing unit test cases before actual code is written. So in this example, we are going to use Nose2 as the framework for Python to support unit testing, and then we are going to again left shift unit testing before development is done. Let me show it to you. So if I'm a developer, I'll be going here, and let me show you the Nose2 framework unit testing on the TDD angle, which is test-driven development angle. So we have, as a sample, 2 test cases here. One test case is for a positive test case, and one test case is for a negative test case. The first test case here is a negative test case scenario, which is basically making sure that it's very important to match these things to the BDD. So let me explain what I mean by that. So if you go here, see, the first step in the given when then syntax was the user is supposed to go to this URL in Chrome. So now we would have an equivalent TDD for it. So if you go here, when the user lands there, if the server is unresponsive, when the user goes to the home page, then it will throw a 200 error. So we are doing some negative testing here to meet that first BDD scenario, and we're also testing a positive scenario. We are making sure that if the server is indeed up and running, does it give back a valid web page, like a UI page, or is it throwing a 404 or not giving the right output? So we are doing a unit test case for both a positive and negative scenario. But the very important thing to note is it is directly mapped to the BDD. So going back here, it is important to note that the BDD is more towards the user experience angle, and the TDD is how the developers are writing their pieces to make the BDD happen. And these work seamlessly to make sure that we are left shifting and capturing a lot of defects and creating alignment. So hopefully by this exercise, I have told you guys, explain both behavior development and test-driven development. And this has to work hand in glove. Now I'm going to go and make sure that I demonstrate some of the best practices. Of course, there's a lot of best practices in source code management. Now what we're going to do is the developer is now going to add that product, which is the requirement for adding an umbrella into the pull down through a microservice, and we are going to use the Flask microservice, which in a Flask is a container framework which works for Python. So this developer is going to add umbrella into that microservice and push it to GitHub, and we are going to do a gated commit. And then if all the testing and everything is good, it will automatically trigger a continuous build into the framework. That's what we're going to do. Now, to understand this a little bit better, it is very important for you guys to make sure that we talk about the the alignment is that. Let me go to the application and then show it to you. Now I'm a developer. I'm going to go into the app. If you see here, I'm going into the app. I'm going into the application. This is the application. This is the application here. This is the two pieces here. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to make sure this is the overall index page here. And so this is the full application app. Now the second microservice here is the products microservice, and here we have the list of products, and we want to make sure that we add umbrella. So currently I have it ready here. So previously this was not there. Now I've added this umbrella microservice and kept it ready. Now let me commit this stage. I'm going to commit it. So I'm going to push this to the GitHub, which is our source code management. And if you note here, I'm putting the story number of Azure DevOps here. It's very important to note this. So if you see here, the story number was 6. And when I am committing the code here, I'm making sure that I put the story number here, because we are, for compliance reasons, we are going to make sure we say that, hey, for this story, we have made this specific code change. So there is clear documentation for compliance and legal or any other purposes that we want to track. So we are going to commit the change, and we are going to push this change. So when we are pushing this change, let's go to GitHub, which is the source code repository for us. If you see here, 20 seconds back, the source code was pushed to the source code repository, and now it should have triggered for us a build. Let's see, we're going to go into Jenkins, and if you see here in our pipeline, currently after it triggers a continuous integration build. So that's what we're demonstrating here. If you click our products pipeline, now the pipeline has been triggered, and you can visualize the full flow of that particular story, which is supporting that, adding the umbrella going all the way through. So you see here that the container, which was the Flask microservice, the changes was done to the microservice. And then if you see here, there is Sonar Cube, which is currently, we are going to demonstrate this in the pipeline for static security testing. These days and times of digitalization, it is very important to understand the concept of static and dynamic security testing. So we were shortly going to demonstrate the results of this static container security testing. Then if you see here, there was a BDD done. Only when the BDD and TDD was successful, it pushed it to the dev instance, so that we don't end up correcting the unique developer did not end up corrupting all other users. This demonstrates gated commit, the principle of gated commit. Now here is the dynamic security testing, and we are using a software called the Trivi to do dynamic scanning on the container. Now for compliance, okay, we can, if needed, we can just zip through this whole pipeline, but we want to document who is approving the deployment of the code to stage. So it's stopping here to say, hey, do you want to proceed? So I'm saying yes. So it's making sure that all the right approvals are secured for compliance purposes. And now if you see here, it is deployed to production, but then it's going, it's again waiting for approval. And then once the approval is secured and making sure everything is working fine, then it is going to production. So we saw that the full pipeline went through, and by now what should have happened is, let me go back to our pipeline slide. So the full pipeline went through. Here we saw the continuous integration, where we made sure that BDD was done, TDD was done, gated commit was done, static security analysis was done, dynamic security analysis was done. It made sure that all the project documents were pushed into a repository, in our case Docker Hub. And once all these things were orchestrated, then it pushed it into production. In our case, we are using Kubernetes for cluster management in Google Cloud. So I'm going to show that in a second, how I'm going to show Google Cloud and how this particular microservice of adding an umbrella, as a product is getting pushed. So let's go to Google Cloud next. So if we go to Google Cloud here, the platform, we are in the Kubernetes engine, And if you see the cluster, currently we have two microservices. One is the app itself, the web app itself, and then we have the pull down, which is the second microservice, which is basically the list of products. So because we did a change right now, let's see if that list of products has been added. Let's see. Let me see if I can click the services, and then we should be able to go ahead and see that. Let me make sure. So I'm going to go into the products microservice. I'm going to go. So if you see here the umbrella, and I know I added a space. If you see that the umbrella microservice is now triggered and successfully deployed into production. Now that means that the app which was previously only showing these two, if I refresh it, it should also show the umbrella. If you see here, it also now shows the umbrella. So you saw how that one feature which got triggered from the business through a portfolio management angle from OnePlan, it went into Azure DevOps. It went into Azure DevOps for planning as a story, and then from there it went into the PI planning, and I can show you that also in a second. If you go see, this is the various PIs. So it went into the PI planning angle, and then once it was planned into the appropriate PI, then if you see here, we have shown, we have taken an effort to demonstrate the concept of value stream identification and value stream mapping. What you see here, the three big buckets here, or the three components, and here are the sub components, and for the microservices, and we have mapped the teams to the microservices. For example, in our case, this microservice or product catalog was updated, and this team, which is CRM and vendor management team, supports 3 microservices. So it is very important to do this value stream mapping exercise, and then that way that you have very clear transparency. Now, to demonstrate continuous compliance, where there is this user story, at any point in time, you should be able to say, hey, what did this user story, what was the code change done because of this user story? In one click, because we have linked all the tools, in one click, you should be able to see it directly talks to GitHub, and it says that, hey, this rain code was not there before, now this rain code has been added. So that is very important so less people think about less documentation. Sometimes it's not less documentation, it is automated documentation is the answer in these days and times. That's number one. Number two, I want to take a second to explain that security, because DevSecOps is currently very important. The security angle in DevSecOps is very important. So I'm going to show how static security static scanning is done. So I'm going to show Sonar Cube. So if you click here, we have already made sure that the Sonar Cube is integrated in the pipeline. So if I click this, open it in a new tab, if you see, it made sure that the code, if you see the rules here, and we are using Python, so our code is being scanned against all these rules, and these rules can be both internal and external controls, and you have to make sure that these rules are constantly updated all the time. So if you do that correctly, then you make sure that all the best practices of static code analysis in terms of security and testing are properly done. And if you see here from overall code health angle, we have an issue. We have one issue here as one hotspot, and we can double click here, review what is the problem, and have a plan to fix it as an enabler. And it's very important to tie the two together. Now, taking one step ahead, and about dynamic security testing, or in this case, we are doing a dynamic scan of the container, and we are using a software called Trivi here. So in one click, you can go and see all the vulnerabilities grouped by the criticality. We see high criticality, low criticality issues being reported, and then we have to now make sure that these criticalities are documented in our backlogs as enablers, planned for it, and then fixed for mitigation. So I just wanted to make sure that there is clear touch points on compliance, clear touch points on security, and one more piece is about rolling back the code. So I'm going to show Docker Hub. So if you see this Docker Hub here, we have all the artifacts of that particular code push. We should be able to go ahead and see 8 minutes ago. If you see here, the full, all the changes, the files, the codes, the configuration that we did is currently here. And at any point in time, if you want to pull this latest container and deploy it, we should be able to just pull this, run a few commands, and get this container for the chain that we did downloadable as an executable. But at any point, if you want to roll back, we should also be able to go back. And this is very important to demonstrate for another aspect of version control and compliance. Okay, I think we have touched upon most of the pieces here. We talked about business agility. We talked about the full stack here. It's very important to understand one more angle here: decoupling deployment from release. Just because things are deployed to production does not mean that it is released to the customer. You can use various techniques like feature toggles, dark launches, canary releases. There are so many techniques and ways by which you can control these things. That way we can do a thorough testing in production and then give the business the flexibility to turn on and off the things they want at the right time, which is very important. So I just want to make sure that we explain that part here. Now we talked about this slide. Now here I have a visual on how that feature which came in as an umbrella is going through. These are the various teams in the train in the SAFe framework. And here on the left-hand side, it's very important to have an agile architecture. Here we have taken an effort to map the teams to the microservices. And when I explained in that Azure DevOps, I showed how this particular team supports these 3 microservices. And in our particular use case, the change was made in this one microservice, and I explained these 3 are the components and these are the subcomponents. This whole thing is very important to understand, because if you don't do this mapping, which mostly is an output of value stream identification and value stream mapping exercises, then you may do a DevOps pipeline. You may have the full-fledged automation, but you have no value flowing through. What is the point having an end-to-end pipeline with no value flowing through it? So all these things work together for loose coupling, and it's important to implement these best practices. So how do you implement these best practices? When you go to a company, it does not happen overnight. Okay, it does not happen overnight. So we need to have a DevOps transformation canvas in play. We have to document the current state of our development value stream, or our our pipeline. And after a document, these things may not be these simple 16 boxes. It can be integration with third-party customers. It can be batch files. It can be setups, manual setups. Then once we identify all these steps, then we have to go and measure the time. We have to measure the folks working on these various steps. Then we have to go ahead and measure the time taken and put metrics around these various steps. And then we have to identify which one is taking the most time from a system angle. Okay, we have additional metrics here. For example, here you see that this particular step is 1,000 hours of lead time. So why don't we focus on this particular step? What can we do to make this leaner? And that step would be identified through the stars, maybe feature toggles, or maybe blue-green deployments, or maybe TDD, or maybe BDD. So those best practices have to be identified in the future state. Then we have to make sure that it's very important to make sure that those identified best practices are put together as enablers, got the funding and everything from your lean business, lean portfolio management. The portfolio management funds these epic enablers or the feature enablers in the right way. And there is a concept called capacity allocation in SAFe, which makes sure that there is proper support for these DevOps transformation initiatives. And then you make sure, just like any other business functionality, you put it into plan in the PI planning and make sure that it is implemented and delivered. Again, if you don't do these DevOps practices and you go and expect all your team members to go and say, hey, SAFe says that every 2 weeks go ahead and do a system demo, it's not fair. We have to make sure that we give the teams the necessary tools and processes to comply with the framework. Hence, SAFe and DevOps works hand in glove, along with and to make sure that there is smooth flow of value and time to market being much sooner, customers happy, business happy, and make sure that the lean portfolio management can realize a value in their for all their initiatives much sooner. So I'll stop here and pass it back to Jose for any closing comments.
Thank you, Wiseland, for that great demonstration of an end-to-end DevOps lifecycle. So just want to close with a summary and some call to actions on your end. So as you saw, DevOps practices have to be implemented to get the full benefits of enterprise Agile. You need to focus on optimizing your development value stream, and you can only do that by bringing together the completion of development to through DevSecOps to release to production and release demand to the end customer. It's a fairly technical domain, as you saw, so you need to rely on a proven advisor that has that prior DevOps experience, and in this case, also the ability to tie it together with ScaleAgile, with the ScaleAgile Framework, which we believe adds additional value to the DevSecOps best practices. Any organization can start the journey. So no matter where you are, if you're actually developing software, building products for your customers, there's probably optimization that can occur within your development value stream. So even if you've already started, also, you can always optimize and make better as technology improves and the automation tools get better in terms of the integrations. Now with a greater focus on security, there's even more automation techniques that can be used to include security within your development value stream. And finally, the journey never ends. The practice is really about setting up that framework so you can measure all the metrics from DevSecOps and then have a plan for improving them as you move forward in your journey. So it's an interesting practice because there's always an improvement that can be done in order to get faster value to the end customer. So what's next? We encourage you to make contact with us in order to have a discovery session on what your current state of DevSecOps is. We offer a Discovery DevSecOps workshop, which is basically a work session where we go through and understand where you're at and the areas of improvement that are available, challenges that you might be facing. I showed our OnePlan product, and we have links that I'll be showing you in the next slide that give you the ability to test the tools out if you want to give them a trial at no cost. And then finally, if you want to go and get more into the context of a personalized demo, we can do that for you also with our OnePlan for lean portfolio management. In terms of the DevSecOps Discovery Workshop, it's really about what is the current state of your people, process, and tools. Where are some areas of improvement in order to increase the metrics of release to the customer? where can we and how we can begin to define the transformation roadmap for best adoption success. A lot of organizations, might have the same problems, but in terms of how we address them uniquely for your culture and your business, have demand a unique approach, and that's where that discussion can take place. And then finally, it's also about investment. So this is going to take time, money, expertise, and we help you define that total cost of ownership in order to make the change initiative a reality. I mentioned the trials, so you can get started today with free OnePlan trials. I have the links there for both our Agile Portfolio Management trial for Azure DevOps, as well as for our Adaptive Project Portfolio Management capability. And they're within the Microsoft Visual Studio Marketplace as well as App Source. So you can go there and download them. There is ability for you to seek support if you're having difficulty in getting them installed within your tenant. And by the way, we mentioned here Azure DevOps, but the solutions actually also connect to Jira in the event that you're also using Jira. With that, I am going to close. We are Wickersoft. Thank you for your time. We are a leading Microsoft partner within the Microsoft ecosystem. We are actually a joint venture with Microsoft. We're a global organization. Within our PPM practice, we have approximately around 350 people that are practitioners, have been in the market for some time. You can see our certifications below, and we have one Partner of the Year, as well as Partner of the Year finalist several years. So we are in the top echelon of the partners. We pride ourselves in being client-focused, driving innovation, and focused on leading technology to enable your business. And in terms of our offerings, you can see that we have our productivity solutions, IT infrastructure and security, and managed delivery and talent acquisition services. To drive your success, we believe in an advisory solutions and operations wrapper around our services. We want to help you define the strategy and the best approach for your organization, the business outcomes that are going to drive key results. From there, design solutions that will help us get there, and then finally sustain them through our operations offerings. And from a portfolio management standpoint, again, this is a very specific expertise that we have, where our practitioners have been in the market for many, many years, since the beginning of the Microsoft stack in project portfolio management. So we are a one-stop shop for organizations, for them to rely on us to make improvement possible in portfolio management, whether it's Agile, Waterfall, or Adaptive. Our offerings go from the implementation services and really the definition of the strategy and advisory, all the way through sustaining them as you go through your journey. And with that, I want to thank you for your time. I encourage you to look at our webinars, upcoming webinars. And if you happen to have any specific need or question that we didn't answer, please make contact. I put our information there for you to reach out in case you need to. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you in our next presentations.